This is Dan Sullivan. I'm the president of the Council of Georgist Organizations. And I have with me Joshua Vincent and Tom Kramer. Joshua Vincent is president or chair of the Center for the Study of Economics.
The executive director.
Executive director.
Yeah,
so both my guesses were wrong. And Tom Kramer is the mayor of Millbourne, Pennsylvania. And before I turn it over to Josh, who will turn it over to Tom, I wanted to give people a little bit of an idea of where Millbourne is. Do you guys see the Philadelphia?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if my cursor shows up very well, but if you look at the dot that says Philadelphia and you follow the street slightly north, but mostly east to the border, that green line is the border. The first thing you get to is the street. That one side of the street is Millbourne and the other side is Upper Darby. Is that right? But it's a very strategic location. And Millbourne itself, let me see if I can get a, are you guys all seeing the closer map of Millbourne?
Yes.
Okay, good. And what you see is Millbourne itself is a very small municipality. It's about a half a square mile. And it's got one main business street and several side streets. And it also has the first stop outside of Philadelphia for the mass transit line, for the high-speed rail line. And it has this giant vacant area, which was the old Sears site, and which will come up in the story a little later. And it's also interesting to note that just beyond Millbourne, on the left-hand edge of this, is the grand terminal for all these light rail trains. And it's also the junction just past. This is the last stop that everybody gets on. So if you're from if you're in Millbourne, you can go everywhere, because just past Millbourne, the line branches into lines that run east and lines that run south and lines that run north. And so this is a very strategic location for that reason as well. And that will all come up. And then this site will come up in the discussion too. And I think that's enough. I'll just turn it over to Josh now. And do you want me to leave this picture up, or I think people have a general.
Maybe you can minimize it a little so I can see everybody.
Okay. Let me get back into Zoom. Oh, I don't know how to minimize it. I'll just stop the sharing.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dan. As some of you may know, I'm Josh Vincent. I am the director of the Center for the Study of Economics. And we've been working for some years, since 1980, to research the appropriateness of land value taxation in municipalities, counties, regions, and in some overambitious cases, states. But I think we're going to get those later. I've been working with Mayor Kramer for a lot of years, actually. And I can tell you that he's one stubborn guy, and that's really going to be the meat of the discussion. He's very cool. He's from Dormont, Pennsylvania, which is near Pittsburgh. Is that correct?
That's right, just to the south.
So he's got land value tax in his veins, and he has terrific taste in music. At least we share the same taste. But I want to jump right into it, and I'm going to just offer some wide-ranging questions and let you run with it. Then we'll have questions later. Uh, First thing I'd like to ask is, you saw where Millbourne is on the map. Well, what brought you to Millbourne, Pennsylvania?
Well, thanks, Josh, for having me, and for everyone, all our participants. I came to, well, as Josh mentioned, originally from Pittsburgh. I embarked on a career in IT in the very early 80s, 1980 actually, and had been working in California for McDonnell Douglas briefly, and had a chance to relocate back to the East Coast here, where my family is. And so I moved to Philadelphia, and in the early 80s, and I didn't move to Millbourne, where I am now, until 1989, I think it was 1989. So it wasn't too long until after I moved to the area. I was working for a company. I was looking to buy a house, my first house. I was still in my 20s, and I was working for a company that was based in the Science Center in Philadelphia, which is just joins the University of Pennsylvania and Drexel University, and had been commuting there, and realized that the Millbourne was very, very convenient to that. It's just a couple stops along the Market Frankfurt elevated train, which took me to my place of employment there. So it made a lot of sense, an easy commute, and the housing stock was decent, large homes, good value for the money, and that's basically how I came to Millbourne all those years ago.
Okay, 1989. So yeah, it's been a long time. And I know that you're very active in the community in more ways than one. Since you moved to Millbourne and became a stakeholder, what changes have you seen in the borough's makeup, its demographics, and its economic situation, that kind of thing? We'll get into the government stuff a little later.
Well, when I originally moved here, that plot of land that was pointed out on the map there, there was a Sears and Roebuck store that was there. And that Sears and Roebuck store was one of the big old stores that were solid as Sears, with the big Greek-looking Doric columns and so on. And it looked like it had been there forever and would probably be there forever. And it was, I think it was built there in 1925. And the borough's economics were very tied to that. All its eggs were in one basket, pretty much. And shortly before I moved to the borough, and I mean months before I moved to the borough, without me realizing it, the Sears had been wooed away by our neighboring municipality, Upper Darby, to relocate there, and had sold the property to a company or an individual that basically sat on the property for a long, long time, for up until very recently, actually.
Right.
And the demographics of the borough, I would say, when I originally moved here, it was a lot of homeowners, single-family homes that were owned mostly, I would say mostly white flight from Southwest Philly, that occurred before I had moved to the area. But from what I've read, I understood, that's kind of how the suburbs were populated over the years. Millbourne was founded in 1911, I think it was. So this was basically this was out in the sticks. This was the country then. But we had this Market Frankfurt L line that was just built at that time, and that connected it to the city. So it's had this deep connection to the city, and it actually had a mill that was right at the junction of the city and the Delaware County here. Thus the name Millbourne. So that mill was there for a couple hundred years. And the original settlers back in Williams Penn's time, the Sellers family were deeded the land by William Penn. And I won't go too much into the history, but it's got a lot of actually pretty interesting history to it. But when I moved here, the thing that followed the Sears was the Sears and Roebuck. That followed the mill was the Sears and Roebuck, and then the Sears and Roebuck was on its way out, or had actually closed its doors by the time I moved in. The demographics, as I started to say, have changed over the last 30 years radically. I'd say that probably within the first 10 years, there was a big influx of immigrant population. Mostly, there was Korean at the time, but that rapidly became mostly South Asian, some Southeast Asian, with Bangladeshi, Indian, Pakistani, a significant adjoining us in Upper Darby. That the Upper Darby is it's the 5th largest municipality in Pennsylvania, so it's a big area. But the area that adjoins us, closer to the city, heavily immigrant dominated too. The housing stock changed quite a bit too. It started to be broken up into multifamily units and a lot of rental properties. So there were, as time went on, there were a lot of people who weren't particularly invested in the community, other than having rental properties in the community.
It sounds familiar to a lot of us that work in towns. In fact, being a one horse pony, having Justin Sears is a lot like our Pennsylvania former steel towns that have enacted LVT. When the steel mill pulls up stakes, it can be a disaster. And it sounds like it was not too cool for Millbourne either. Also, Millbourne, doesn't it have the distinction of being the highest population of South Asian people in the of any municipality in the United States?
I think it is the highest percentage. I mean, it's certainly, I'm certainly an anomaly. It's the latest census numbers aren't out as far as I'm aware. I haven't seen them, and I'm sure it's undercounted here in Millbourne, as it always is. But I would not, my estimation would be it's got to be at least 90% South Asian. We have a Sikh temple. Sikhs are a sect from northern India, a Gurdwara they call it. We have significant Muslim population, obviously, with Bangladesh and Pakistan, and also India. Of course, Hindu, Sikhs, some Keralite Christian. We have my spouse is Cambodian. We have a significant or a smattering of Vietnamese, Chinese, Laotian. Oh Lordy, what else do we have? You name it. Oh, we have a big African population of immigrants, but by far the dominant population is South Asian, first generation, with limited language skills, and limited understanding of government, for sure.
I know you'll get into that. I think people would be interested to know that almost all of the elected officials are from Bangladesh or Kerala in Kerala state in India.
They all
And
are, except me.
all of them except
Yeah.
you, okay? And the borough manager, Nancy.
It was.
I
She's not
know
elected.
that Millbourne, and this is going to be kind of familiar to people that know about LBT as a West Pennsylvania phenomenon. You went under Act 47, which many of our towns in Western and Central Pennsylvania have. And for the audience, Act 47 is kind of being the bête noire of municipalities in Pennsylvania. It's where your finances are failing to the extent that the state takes over the finances, and it has some benefits for towns. You get to renegotiate union contracts, which of course is a very big deal. Why did Millbourne go into Act 47?
Well, basically with the Sears closing, they lost a huge chunk of their revenue and had to raise taxes enormously to recover that. The other reason is I was not involved with the government here or much of anything really, other than a few neighborhood cleanups and town watches and things like that. And I really knew nothing of what was going on behind the scenes. But apparently our elected officials at that time, and keep in mind, we're a very small borough, and there's not a lot of glory in being an elected official really, but there was a lot of malfeasance going on, and definitely mismanagement. I mean, to the point where when the state came in, all of the receipts were filed away in the council president's attic in shoe boxes and so on. And it was just a mess. They came in and they didn't know where to start. So the DCED really was the helper in getting us back in order and hiring financial folks to get the books in order, not take us out of financial distress necessarily, but get the books in order.
All right. When did Millbourne emerge from Act 47?
See, I think we entered Act 47 in 1993. I didn't realize it had been this long. So the Sears went out of business in 89, I think it was. And we entered Act 47 in 93. I just looked this up myself. And we didn't emerge from it until March of 2014, which was quite a while. And as you said, there were benefits that went along with that. We didn't have to comply with certain unfunded mandates too that would have put additional burdens on us. The biggest part of our budget is as it is with most places or a lot of places is the police department, and that's why Millbourne formed and separated from its neighboring township originally, was because we weren't getting adequate police services. So police services here are really, I think, deservedly the largest part of the budget, but we've really come a long way with all that. I think we have a really good police department now, and we've actually, I mean, we have a capital fund and everything incredibly, and
That's a rare thing for any town. So I guess I would ask you, and this is not a leading question, but when did you first hear about the most powerful and innovative tax policy tool in the history of humanity?
I assume you mean land value tax, and that's, I think
Well,
that was,
yes.
that was I got involved in council, I think in 2004 it was, 2003 or 2004. And they had a vacancy on council. A neighbor asked if I'd be willing to serve. I was registered independent at the time, and they told me you'd have to register as a Republican because the county was Republican controlled for over 100 years, and that's the only way we would get any CDBG money. And that didn't sound quite right, but I just said, well, whatever, you know, for the go to the borough, I'll register whatever you need. So I got involved, but I was the first couple of years I was pretty much peripherally involved, but I was probably more involved than most of the council, actually. And I joined with the Delaware County Association of Boroughs and the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs, and attended one of their meetings where they had a guy speak on land value tax. And I'd been to, I knew that our Sears property was our big albatross that we couldn't, that was holding us back. And I mean, when I first got involved, I wasn't even aware of the particulars of that. What I was most concerned of is that they were bringing in truckloads of garbage and dumping it there in the middle of the night. And I had approached the borough and you know, I asked, you know, how can this happen? I mean, I can't bring in truckloads of fill overnight and dump it in my backyard. How can this happen? So I became aware that there were political complications with the owner of the property having an undue influence on politics, and wasn't too happy with that. You know, that's we couldn't any fines that we tried to impose, or we were basically held hostage by this large 1/3 of our borough, the owner of that property, and we couldn't do anything about it. I'm probably digressing here a bit. Your question was, how did I hear about land value tax? So I was looking at, I was looking at what you know, what can we do about this? And I had never heard of land value tax, and I'd heard of eminent domain, and I thought, well, maybe we can just take the property. I mean, it's certainly unfair what he's doing with it. We're not getting any taxes from it because he's gone to the county and had the value of it lowered drastically, and the borough didn't do anything about that. So the meager tax that we had been getting from the property was now even lower. So it was vastly undervalued. We apparently couldn't do anything about that. And we couldn't use eminent domain because we couldn't afford to buy the property. We were broke. So I attended this presentation. I think it was Ed Dodson who gave the presentation, and I thought, wow, this is it. I mean, this has got to be the answer for what we've got, because it's got, you know, it's, first of all, we didn't have much of a stick approach. We didn't have anything to, but by taxing it the way that it should be taxed, because it's 1/3 of the borough, it would be an incentive to actually do something with it. And we had really tried a lot, basically trying to sell it ourselves, and getting grant money for it and so on. So I'd seen this presentation, and someone came into the borough. I don't know if it was you, Josh, or if it was Ed. And it was way back then. It must have been around 2005 or 06, 2006 maybe.
Yeah.
Where Ed did, someone did a presentation.
Yeah, I think I did actually.
Okay.
Because it was before, the first presentation is before we had any assessments. You know,
Right. And that was part of the problem, was just getting the assessments.
Oh, we could go into well, yeah, we'll go into this.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, it was a very well attended presentation,
yeah.
and everybody in the borough, including the other elected officials, were on board with it. Unfortunately, the county was not on board with it. And well, that's a whole nother story. It's basically that we couldn't get the data to do an analysis from the county because they insisted that they didn't have land values, they didn't exist. We had a solicitor who was the president of county council, and kept insisting that it was illegal for us to enact land value tax, and if we attempted to, we would be sued, and we couldn't hope to prevail over the landowner because it was illegal, and it was I forget, what did he argue? It was a spot assessment or something like that. A reassessment of the property. And anyway, our solicitor at the time was a powerful figure in the county. And the other people on council at the time agreed with him that he was probably correct, that we just couldn't do it.
It's funny. I work with a lot of local governments, as does Dan, and of course Ed, when he was with Fannie Mae, went all over the East Coast to talk to struggling towns. But what interests me about what you were just saying is that he said it's not legal, and when I reacted, we got together and I gave you the borough law, the borough bill, which I think Alana Hartsock is here. Who helped push for adoption of the bill signed by Governor Ridge, and it was legal. Right. So why did he say it wasn't?
Yeah, do you recall what, I mean, his argument to us, I mean, to me again and again, and I believe to you as well, was that it was a spot reassessment. That
Even
it would be seen as
we're not changing the values.
Right, and unfortunately at that time, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we should have adopted it back in 2005. It took us, what, until another decade or even longer or something to finally adopt it? I think longer than that.
Well, if
that was 2005, we didn't adopt it until
2011, right?
Until 26. No, it was 2016 when we first adopted it. And part of yeah, and the real reason for that is we had a change in council. We had a change in county council. And then 2008, we had the whole economic situation. And the woman who replaced me on county council, Jeanette McNeil, if you remember, she insisted the owner of the property, it was now the son, and we were going to turn over a new leaf. He was a different person that we'd be working with. The economy was in a shambles, and there was supposed to be all this stimulus money. So we had this wonderful property that was ripe for transit-oriented development. It had two, the SEPTA at the time, the Market Frankfurt L, the people who run the public transportation here in Philadelphia area, had just rebuilt the whole line, rebuilt the stations, or actually they were in the process of that. So it was always something, well, we can't do anything there until they're finished with their process. And that was about a 5-year process for them to rebuild the Market Frankfurt L line. So that killed about 5 years from 2005 to say 2010. And then when we had the new administration come in, they insisted that wasn't the approach, but what we needed to do was we needed to develop a stationary development plan, which we did, and we spent years on that and a lot of money and a lot of grant money, envisioning this transitory development for that 17 acres, and getting a lot of buy-in from the community, and it basically went nowhere. And it went nowhere because I guess, they were expecting stimulus funds to flood into this, and it never happened. It wasn't shovel ready. It wasn't.
And talking about going nowhere, it's kind of interesting when you get off the L in Millbourne, you can walk up some steps into the borough proper, and then there's a majestic stairway that goes down to the Sears property, former Sears property, and it just dumps you onto a rubble-strewn parking lot. And I wonder how much SEPTA spent on that station.
A lot. And it still is a beautiful station. They spent money on art, some artwork there, sort of a peacock design, taking into consideration the population of the borough. And I mean, they really put a lot of money into it. They even had a rose garden down there at the foot of at the station that goes into the empty lot. It's now all overgrown and in the process of being torn up. But that's something else. But I'm sorry.
No, I was saying this is a great case where land value capture or land value tax makes all the sense in the world, and all the public expenditure, nothing happened.
Yeah, we did everything that we could, I guess, with the carrots and getting planning it all out for them and doing economic studies, and we spent years doing that. I mean, we still have it posted on our website, our station area development plan. We rezoned it as a TOD. What's it called? A TRID.
Oriented development.
Yeah, and also basically so that it was zoned for only certain types of development that would bring revenue into the borough.
Yeah.
So, it was all we did everything we could except apply any pressure. We didn't have a way of applying pressure.
Well, essentially, your town is, in the bigger conception of things, is pretty powerless, right?
Absolutely powerless. And we were, the thing is, by being in financial straits, we were really beholden to the folks in the county to throw us some breadcrumbs and CDBG money and things like that. So I think that might have been another reason why the council at the time didn't want to push the county too hard. I was very frustrated, but what happened was that situation changed. We have a 5-person council, but what we had when the council basically flipped from one party to another, it changed hands to, we had 2 people on council, one woman leading the council and another young guy on council who were very much on board with the types of they were on the same page with the planning and so on, and they were better educated. They were on the ball. The other 3 people on council were basically, I hate to say it, but they were basically what do you call it, identity politics, sort of. It was we need to have a Sikh, and we need to have a Bangladeshi, and we need to have an Indian, and they insisted on. So, I mean, I don't mean to be derogatory, but they did not understand anything that was going on, but they generally rolled along with what was being presented. And at that time, the borough was fully, that was the majority of the voters. That's the only way we could take the control of the borough away from the people who were really dominating it from the county and that did not have our interest in mind. It was basically, they basically realized that it benefited them to be subjugated to the county, no matter what and in fact, some of them didn't even live in the borough.
Yeah, I recall that when one of the first times I went to Millbourne, your council president, maybe not the council president, but he was a property owner on the big highway, Market Street, and he lived about 20 miles away from the borough.
Right, in a $750,000 mansion out in Yeah, so,
Springfield or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So, you know, it's kind of strange to have this, what do you call, carpetbagger council person, as well as the owner of the Sears property, who of course lives in the beautiful Main Line area of Philadelphia. And so it seems like you really were being a cat's paw, you know, a plaything.
yeah, I tried selling it to the residents as, you know, that basically when I came into this, I had no idea. I thought, you know, we live in America, everything's fair and hunky dory, and yeah, there's some graft and cheating here and there, but I didn't realize how deep it was, and I didn't realize that most people were either unaware of it or they just accepted it as, yeah, that's just the way things are, and it's still that way. Unfortunately, it's still that way. I don't know if it's because I know in our area, it's largely because people are working several jobs to survive. In our area, they're first generation immigrants, so they're struggling and they don't have time to get involved. And even if they could grasp it, I don't know. Most of them are looking to split up the properties into as many rental properties as they can, get as much money as they can out of it, and move to a better area.
Really a rentier property.
Yeah, the 2-car garage, and that's actually been the story with a lot of the Indian population moving to Marple and so on, as they scrape together their savings to get out. So getting people to invest in the area has been a challenge. One of the things, though, that I tried to approach our other members of council was that, and I tried to sort of shame the county into that, you know, our residents were from countries that this sort of graft and corruption, really. I mean, I don't know what other word to say that other than corruption.
Corruption.
Yeah, is the norm, and they should be appalled that, you know, we have these new American citizens here who are, you know, coming into a place that's supposed to be touting its freedom and I guess difference than their own corrupt countries' governments that they were coming from. But I don't know what sort of impression that might have made. I think some of the younger ones, I think, bought into that a little more than the older ones. You got to figure, though, what it is really you're in a situation where people are struggling economically and they're really just looking for a way out themselves.
Just out of interest, what other taxes has the borough used in the past? Dan and I were talking and we were thinking about the wage tax. You don't have a wage tax, right?
We enacted a wage tax, just a 1% wage tax. It's only brought in about $45,000. Not much. And this current council
Is that one for the city on top, or one for the borough on top of the school tax?
The school tax is entirely separate.
Okay.
I don't know who asked that question, but
That was Dan.
oh, was that Dan? Yeah, in Delaware County, let me get rid of this. I got something up blocking my screen. The school taxes are entirely different. I don't know how they are in the rest of the state. But yeah, our school tax is actually based on, we're part of Upper Darby School District, which is the big kahuna in our area. And our taxes are based on not only our own property assessments, but Upper Darby's property assessments, which is why our school taxes are still very high, but our municipality taxes are low because we've adopted land value tax. Now, if Upper Darby would adopt with Upper Darby School District and Clifton Heights, which is also part of the school district, would adopt land value tax, we could see much lower school district taxes, which are astronomical right now.
Your county is pretty lousy with underused land, right? Land that used to be developed industrial or even commercial, and now it's just sitting fallow.
Well, I don't know about the county as a whole, but I can say that you know, Millbourne, this was a prime piece of real estate that there wasn't much pressure on anyone to do anything with it. Just to give you an example of, it was always being touted, okay, you know, you give them LRTA tax breaks and
KOZs,
excuse me,
the KOZs.
the KOZs, yeah, and all the different incentives to incentivize development. And none of those approaches seem to work. What one of the things that happened why Sears moved from our borough was because they were the owner of the property, the current owner of the property, was given a big grant to revitalize this street in Upper Darby where they moved the Sears to. So he bought most of that area, 69th Street, for about $10 million and moved the Sears to that area. And they did a big streetscape project with public funds. And then he flipped that property about a decade later, I think, for about $100 million.
So nice work if you can get it.
So that's basically the way things work. But
in fact, a little ahead here, we're going to have Dan has an interesting observation about the Sears property specifically, and I'm going to throw it over to Dan when that moment arrives. How did land value tax get adopted, though? Did you just keep pushing it?
yeah, once those two members of council left, I realized I was on my own basically, and they didn't know how they were going to make a budget. So the politics started to change in Delaware County. We had a state representative who was going to lend her support, which was the first time our previous state representative, who was of the other party, would not, if you remember, Josh, we had meetings set up with them and they just never even showed up for the meetings.
Yeah.
They had the state senator, nobody would even hear us on it. They would just try to brush us off. So we had I brought it to our new state representative at the time, and she said, well, it sounds good. And I said, the problem is, you know, we know it's legal, but our solicitor is saying, well, you need to get a new solicitor. So we got a new solicitor who you know, looked at it and said, yeah, I mean, there's no reason why you can't do it. We hired him right away, and that year we enacted it, but I still had to sell them on doing it piecemeal. They wouldn't go for 100%
right away.
Right away. And the first year that we adopted it at 75%, which was as far as they would go, residents saw a 12% decrease in their property taxes, their municipal property taxes, which is significant for here because I have let me see here. I don't know if I can share this screen. I'm going to attempt to.
Yeah, I'm not in charge.
Yeah, I think I can. Let me.
I'd be able
to. Can anybody see that?
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
Okay, so what we've got is I just took basically the taxes to around the time that I moved in, and well, actually, I didn't have all the way back that far, but you can see the trends here in the red years: 23% tax increase, 18%, 14%, 21%, 11%. So between the years 96 and 2005, we had a 182% increase in taxes. And then up to 2005, from 2001 to 2005, I don't know what the significance, oh, because I didn't have the years before that, was an 81%. But basically, when we really fully took over the borough, we had a 0% tax that year. And the reason for that was because basically we got rid of all the patronage. We started bidding out contracts, which had never been bid out before, because the party that held control insisted that, just to give you an idea, our budget was around, I think only around 750,000 or something, but 100,000 of that was for our insurance. And the insurance was with a company that basically insured almost all of the county. And it had never been bid out. And when I was council president, I insisted that we get further bids on it. And I just could not get our borough manager or anyone to cooperate and get bids on it.
Wow.
We finally changed hands and we got bids. We went from 100,000 to 40,000. So less.
You didn't end up in a trunk
So
somewhere.
so less than half. Yeah, I mean, I was told simply by the people who were really controlling the borough, although I was the council president, that it's politics. It's politics, and you can't get other bids, basically.
Wow.
So once we got rid of them and swept them out the door, we were able to get bids on things, cut out a lot of nepotism, do a lot of trimming. But basically, there was only so much trimming we could do. And there were a few years where we had to do some increases. As you can see, we did a 10% increase there. But for the most part, we really
Held the line.
yeah, we did pretty well with a few increases. But when we adopted land value tax in 2016, we were, and for the first time ever, and this might be a real rarity in most municipalities, to actually decrease taxes. We decreased them 12%, and then when we further adopted 100% land value tax, a further 16% decrease. So that was all without further development of any significant properties in the borough. We were able to decrease taxes.
That leads me, I guess, to, I think, the most important question about the health of small communities that don't have a lot of juice, as we say in the US. When the borough went 100% LVT in 2018, did development patterns change from years previous?
Yeah, and what happened was, this is interesting, and this is the stick part of this, of the land value tax approach, is that, well, for us, is obviously that you're raising the taxes on the underused land, and we had several other large properties, nothing the size of that 17-acre property, but we did have a large car dealership that was basically, it was a dilapidated building that had a few businesses that would come and go, and it was a dump. And we had what had been a bowling alley, which had a sizable parking lot, which had gone out of business, and that was bringing nothing either. Those two properties, after we adopted 100% land value tax, they had been sat on for a long time by two owners, and basically there was nothing to incentivize them to do anything with it. Josh had told me, well, when you do this, their accountants are going to look at it and say, well, you need to do something about that. And that seems to be exactly what happened. They within 2 years, they sold those properties to people who wanted to do something with them. And now we have, we're in the process of one of them, the former bowling alley is pretty much, it's getting close to done now, into a mini mall with about, I think there's about 10 or 12 shops in there. I think it's scheduled to be open either the beginning, not the beginning, but the spring of this coming year, 2021, or the fall. The property next door to it is in the process of being developed, and that should be probably by the end of the year. And of course, the big property, which really made the big difference. Unfortunately, that is being developed too, but unfortunately not in the way that we had hoped, as retail and mixed use.
This is a good time then for Dan to jump in with your observation about the Sears property.
Okay. Let me make the question small so I can hit the share screen. I think this is the one that, no, it says I'm screen sharing, but I don't see the screen.
I see it, Dan.
Okay.
You're sharing the borough?
Yeah, the borough and the golf course across the boundary.
Yeah, there's a park and a golf course that borders us.
Yeah. So I was looking at this. I mean, the guy is miffed that you guys want the land value tax. So he wants to develop it for somebody who's tax exempt. And he's in doing that, it sounds like he's shooting himself in the foot, because this has tremendous value. You know, he has a place that's tax exempt can build anywhere and not pay taxes on the buildings. But he has a place where you can build buildings and not pay taxes, whether they're tax exempt or not. And the reduction in taxes on all those buildings would be huge.
He didn't sell the property. He's just letting it be developed by Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. If we did shift back towards a land in improvement, land in building, that would be taxable as well. The improvements would be taxable because he's still the owner.
Okay,
that's my understanding.
It's a crappy use of land.
Well, I mean, it is for us, because there's no, first of all, there's no retail there that we can capture any sort of, there is, I think there'll be about 250 employees. And of course, they tried to sell it as, well, these are going to be jobs for local people, but we all know how that works. I mean, we have a warehouse across the street from them that they promised that was going to be the case, and it's
my
not.
point,
So
I assumed that he was doing that in the hopes that he would get a nonprofit classification if it was a nonprofit use, even if he owned it. I don't know if that's been sorted out.
I've never heard that would be even a possibility, and my understanding is that it wouldn't be, unless the county really double crossed us, and which is not without. Just because they change party, just because they change political party doesn't mean they're not gonna. But
anyhow, here what I was seeing was that, okay, we looked at the other map. This is the closest you can get to Center City and not be in the city of Philadelphia. And if you're in the city of Philadelphia, there's a heavy wage tax on residents. There's also a heavy wage, almost as heavy a wage tax on non-residents who work in Philadelphia. So you can be located where people can live and work in Millbourne, or live elsewhere in Delaware County and work in Millbourne, and be free of that high Philadelphia tax, and be as close as humanly possible to Philadelphia, at least as close as possible, where you don't have to cross a toll bridge, you know, because New Jersey, you can be in New Jersey, but New Jersey's no tax wonderment either. But on top of that, I'm looking at this now. I checked out this golf course and it got terrible ratings. The ratings, when I got the reviews, said it's a very nice golf course, but it's horribly managed because the city of Philadelphia owns the golf course and turned it over to somebody to manage it. But I was looking at this from a developer's mentality and thinking, what I would want Millbourne to do is take away all the density limits, pass a home rule charter that guaranteed to me that they would not go back to property tax after I build buildings. And I would want to build really intense development. You know, I'm in the perfect location for transit. If I would also want to make a deal with Philadelphia so that I was the leaseholder for that golf course, and I would run the golf course at a loss in order to make a ton of money attracting rich people who like golfing to come to that location. And it just seems like it is such a spectacular location for you know, high-rise development that I couldn't imagine why anyone would think that land tax was detrimental to him. You know, I had a landlord in Pittsburgh who I was just renting office space, and he was talking to me about something else, and I said, well, you might not like what we do because we put all the taxes on land value, and he said, that's the best thing Pittsburgh ever did. And I said, well, you know, I did look up your assessments and you pay more under land value tax because you have some buildings that save, like the one I was in, but you also have some vacant lots in the Strip District. And he said, yeah, but I got those vacant lots really cheap because the previous owner didn't want to pay the land value tax. And I intend to develop on it. And what I will save once I develop is way more than the extra that I will pay sitting on these vacant lots. So I just don't think this guy understands it. The developers in Pittsburgh understood it, that it was a great deal for them, because even though their holding costs to not develop would be higher, somebody who wants to develop can save tens of millions of dollars in taxes, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes because of the land value tax.
If they're outside of Philadelphia. And
If
of
they're
course, the problem is the school district has to buy in.
Well, if the school district buys in, it's better. But the fact that you don't have a wage tax, or don't have a high wage tax, I guess with the school district, you probably have 1.5%. School districts are usually a 0.5%.
I think it's 1.5. Yeah.
And
We don't have a wage tax with the school district.
oh, your
Well-
school district doesn't have one.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Oh, okay. So you're looking at 1% versus 4%.
But we did away with or the current council did away with our wage tax, our 1% wage tax.
Okay. Oh, so you have no wage tax. I mean,
Now we currently have no wage tax, so we really have no way to capture anything from that, the development that's going in there now, unless they were to adopt the wage tax again, which they said they won't do because residents were complaining about a 1% wage tax for some reason. I don't know.
Okay. But the land values will go up, and that will you can capture that. But I'm just looking at this from a developer standpoint, and I'm saying this guy's crazy, because I would give anything to have a property like that I could, you know, I would want to develop it as densely as possible.
Dan, I'll say this. I think that I don't know what the reasoning was behind it. I don't know what his reasoning. I know they have properties all over the world, so this is nothing. This is just a little annoyance. I think that you know, they said but I think that they were probably, well, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is a big entity. I'm sure that there was a lot of politics involved, including with our state representative, because when we filed several petitions to against this development and tried to head it off with zoning and so on, we were just completely steamrolled by the county and the and our local elected officials. So I think there were powers at work there that were well over, you know, my powers. So
Yeah.
matter of fact, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what happens. And this sort of leads me, we don't like to talk about assessments. My mentor, Steve Cord, his phrase, his t-shirt said, abjure assessors. They're used to being hated and sued, and you'll make the worst friend in the world. It'll be the worst person in the world you can deal with. So now, fast forwarding, your last assessment, and this is an important issue for anybody that cares about local government. Your property assessments were last done in 1997?
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was going to say a funny joke. It's not that funny, but Abraham Lincoln said, now we are engaged in a great civil war. And that's the reevaluation. That's the reassessment. And I don't think people, except for Milbourne, don't understand what's going on with this reassessment, this revaluation of property after all these years.
Mhm.
Can you speak to that?
Are there other people here from Delaware County?
I doubt it.
Okay. Well, basically,
Brendan Hennigan, he's in Canada.
okay, that's not Delaware County.
That's not good.
Yeah, I don't know. My understanding is that other places generally reassess more frequently than, is it all counties in Pennsylvania that are behind the curve here on this? But in any case,
Pretty much.
The worst in the country.
well, the interest, you know, for us was that I knew that this third of the borough, that property in particular, had been under assessed for decades,
Mhm.
long time. So what I wanted to do was have it reassessed for its real value. And Josh had counseled, wait for the reassessment. They're going to do a reassessment. Eventually, the county's going to do a reassessment. Our solicitor had said the same thing, you know. So I had been sort of holding my breath for this reassessment that was just completed this year for this particular property to see what the will it now be properly assessed to what it's really worth, because it was assessed that's around $1 million and it was probably worth $8 million. So I will say that in general, they got the firm that the county hired got the residential assessments pretty much accurate in our area. However, you know, my interest was in seeing the reassessment of this particular property, since it was such a large part of the borough. And I had to yell and scream to get that data, to get the value, what it had been reassessed at, from the county. Now the appeal dates in the county here were September 1st. I received the reassessed value for just that property alone. I couldn't get the data for the rest of the borough, but just for that, I received that, and my jaw dropped to see that it actually decreased in value. It went to around 750,000 from $1 million to around 750,000, and I said that that's impossible. That can't be right. It hasn't gone down in 20 something years. It's impossible.
Easy, big fella, easy.
Yeah. Oh, it'd be possible. I was told. And well, I made a fuss and I said, I got to see what the other properties, how it hashes out for the rest. So finally I received the data, but I didn't receive the data until the day after the
Deadline.
appeal process was due. So I found that the other large commercial properties in the borough had also received were vastly underassessed. So I mean, it stood out like a sore thumb. It was easy just sucking the data into a spreadsheet and comparing it to the previous assessment and doing a percentage on which went up and which went down, and to see who the winners were in this. And it was supposed to be a revenue neutral reassessment. And it was clear that this was anything but revenue neutral, and it wasn't. It also was not based on what the real market values of these properties were. And then I was given some kind of line about, well, it's not really the market property. There's a common value ratio that they use in assessing commercial properties, and you need to take that into account, and blah 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 blah, and all this other smoke screen that they sort of threw back at me, which was really nonsense.
I hope Ted is here so he can maybe comment on that later. Ted,
I just want to say I mean, my mind was blown away when I saw what had happened, and I sounded the alarm as best I could, and our local school district and Upper Darby seemed to have no clue. Well, they didn't seem to have no clue. They had no clue. Nobody even looked at their data to see what had happened. But thank God, there were a couple other school districts in the county where there were a few people who were on the ball, and they looked at it, and I was relieved to see that they saw the exact same thing that I saw. And
they were out.
Unfortunately, it wasn't all the school districts. It's just a handful of us that see this. Just, I mean, it's incredible. It's like, how could anybody justify this? Oh, well, they will justify it. And where it seems to stand now is they're hoping that they can placate the few squeaky wheels like us. They have reassessed this large property in our borough, but the other properties they will not allow us to appeal them. I just found out recently, got the judgment from the county that they will not allow us to, what do they call it? Pro nunto, I don't remember what it's called, but basically, because it was after the appeal date. They were filed after the appeal date, just days after the appeal date. But we didn't know what to appeal because we didn't have any values. We couldn't see what they were to know what to appeal. Because we had to file a right to know request to get the data, and they didn't get the data to us until after the appeal date. So, but the county still finds that it's in favor of the commercial properties. And the outrageous part of this is that our borough has to pay the costs for the appeal of these properties, which costs us between $5,000 and $20,000 to appeal these properties, which is not small change for a borough like us. Our school district completely dropped the ball for whatever reason. I don't know if it was incompetence or if there was something else involved there. I don't know. I know they still seem to have no interest in the matter. But I can tell you one thing: when their residents see their tax bills, they're going to have to change their underwear because. Anyway, I digress. But
well, we've been talking for about an hour, so we should try to get to questions soon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Last question, one sentence answer: is LVT a net plus for the borough of Millbourne.
Absolutely. And yeah, of course. And in that, you know, it's incentivized development, and it's lowered the residents, the people who live here, it's lowered their taxes. I don't see how that could be a bad thing. I don't see any negatives to that at all. I don't see how anybody could argue that. I will say that I wish that I had sold it to residents, explained it to residents better. But not to let myself off the hook, part of that is because of the demographics of the borough. When we originally presented it to the residents, they were able to grasp it. The people who attended that, if you remember the first talk that you gave, everybody was, you know, oh, this is perfect. This is, but it's a lot more difficult trying to communicate with the current demographics.
Yeah, well, I'd like to thank you. And of course, we're going to move to questions. I think this is a good project for the CGO to maybe send some letters to all the homeowners saying, this is what you've got. And we could be heroes. Just
Well, I will add one thing with this reassessment. When the council saw that what the reassessments were going to do to the taxes, basically people's taxes are going to go up because these large commercial properties taxes went down. So we're basically, the residents' taxes are going to go up to fund the tax decreases of those commercial properties.
Oh, joy.
Yeah, I mean, it's really that simple. But the council has not grasped that yet. And their immediate question was, well, shall we switch back to a regular tax system without land value tax? So I did the numbers for them both ways. And I said, this will cost you average resident $900 more, and this will be less. Which one would you like? I mean, would you like the one that's where you pay less or where you pay more? So I don't think they still haven't quite grasped how fortunate they are.
Yeah,
Did you use hand puppet?
the only tax that Sears property pays is land value tax.
That's
That's
right now it's
There's
100%.
nothing else you can levy that would cost them a dime.
Well, once-
Until they
once
at least
they-
build a
once-
building.
Right, once they build a building, and that's going to be a couple years, and even then, even then, it's, you know, unfortunately, we don't have a council here that is capable of grasping it. And
We'll make them come around. So I'm going to throw it now back to Dan and Sue, who have experience in these things of gathering the questions and so on.
Okay, I have a list of them here. Brendan Hennigan. Now, I think I misled people. I think I said high-speed train station. It's basically just a part of this metro system. It's got lots of stops in it, and so it wouldn't be straightened out. He asked about that. But yeah, I don't, my understanding is that the train, that SEPTA, which is the transit authority, basically only owns the track and the station itself.
that's correct. They have a right of way that goes back to the founding of the borough.
And just beyond Millbourne, they own a massive terminal and place to park empty train cars.
And they're building at the edge of our borough a big parking facility that's been in the works for 20 years. It was supposed to be done by now, but every couple of years they spend a few more million on it and put it off for a few more years. But allegedly it's going to be done soon.
Okay. Marty Rowland has a bunch of questions. I don't know if I'm going to do all of them. He wanted to know what kind of South Asian political opposition do you have, and what form does it take? Are you well received by the South Asians?
we're really a tiny borough, first of all. Although we do have a good voter turnout. And I think, I mean, when I became council president, became mayor, stepped into a more central role, I tried to do things leading by example, doing community cleanups, getting out there with gloves and a bag, and painting out graffiti myself, and taking the lead on things. And it's been the question was how I think I'm not going to run again. This will be my third term. I think really politically, it's almost that I'm a little afraid that they don't know what they've gotten themselves into, and they've had to come to me now almost every year to do their budget for them, and to get them out of jams. But they won't listen to me when it comes down to, I mean, literally, I've had arguments when they were first elected. I showed them land value tax. I showed them the spreadsheet that I showed you earlier of the taxes, how they'd gone up and down. And the response was, that's just your opinion. And I said, no, that's not opinion. These are actual numbers.
That's math.
I mean, that's math. $1,000 is less than 1,500. And they insisted, no, that is only your opinion. I have my opinion. That is your opinion. So that's kind of incredibly, that's what I'm dealing with. So where that's going to go in the future, I have hope for maybe a new generation, a younger generation. But right now, the hands of the council that it's in is not looking favorable,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Okay.
Marty wanted to know about prohibitions. Pennsylvania it's legal for cities and it's legal for boroughs, and there's a really weird thing in boroughs for farms. So as long as you don't have a farm in your borough, boroughs can do it without having any serious problems. And then there's other bills that have to be passed through the state legislature, but there's no constitutional difficulty. There's only needing enabling laws, and cities and boroughs have them. And he's active he has an infrastructure management practice, so I'll tell you about that afterward. James Fredrickson wants to know, is there a study that lists all the property parcels in Millbourne with a tax assessment for each parcel, and compares land and improvements at the same rate? Yeah, that's what you've already said. You did the math on that.
Yeah.
And
I gotta tell you, if you anybody who's wondering out there, get the data, run the numbers, and it's just, I mean, for us, it was a no-brainer. I mean, Josh did a much more detailed study, but I mean, you just run the numbers, and it's you've got 99% of the people who are going to benefit from it. Why wouldn't you do it?
yeah.
The only 100% pay more, though, was your telephone tower on top of Borough Hall.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Boy, there's a whole lot of Marty Rollins. Let me, because we don't want to take too much time. Do you have the new county assessments yet? Yeah, you do. You're just Delaware's 3 counties haven't been reassessed since 1974, Win Ackenbaum notes. So it could be worse. Maryland reassesses 1/3 of its counties each year. And I will add, Maryland also has a concept called assessment buffering. So if you get a large assessment, you get like 1/3 of the increase each year for the 3 years. Jonah Dubin, do you think there are ways to ensure that the LVT is maintained going forward, regardless of council member changes over time? My quick answer is unless you put it in a home rule charter, there's no guarantee. Is that,
Which is what Allentown did.
yeah. And even then, a
That may
home
be
rule
my
charter can be,
last.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Now, I was going to say that might be my last challenge to tackle before I leave office.
A home rule charter?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Well, you can leave office and then run for the
Sure.
Home Rule Charter Study Commission. And because that's how home rule charters are passed, there's a separate elected body that usually does that. If changes are, Robert Jean,
like
if
that.
changes are revenue neutral and land is reassessed at market value, won't there just be a reallocation of the property tax as the relative value of individual parcels change? You would think so, but Pennsylvania is strange with that. When there's a reassessment, they don't allow you to increase your revenue by more than 5%, is my understanding of Pennsylvania law. So if there's a
That's
reassessment,
aggregate revenue.
yeah. So if there's a reassessment, there is an anti-windfall provision in state law that says your municipality cannot reap a windfall through reassessment increases. That they have to lower the rates so that they don't get more than a 5% aggregate revenue increase. How does Millbourne generate revenue if the taxes have gone down? Well, the taxes, the assessments, the property assessment value is going down for that giant vacant property and up for everybody else. So the revenue might increase overall, and they would have to lower the rates to adjust it. Rick Rybeck. Yeah, I'm trying to get through these fairly quickly. Rick Rybeck said, what about school districts? Can they do LVT? No, they cannot. Not yet, but there's interest in getting a school district bill together.
Yeah, and I should say that the Pennsylvania School Boards Association chief lawyer, chief attorney, when I actually called him up because of the back and forth in Delaware County, he said, oh, you know, the land value tax is terrific. Would we like to introduce legislation? I said, yeah, that's what you want to do.
Oh, cool.
You know, just a local option, that's all.
Yeah.
I'm going through the chats now. Brendan wants to know, we talked about this some. Brendan, does the Asian community understand the benefits of LVT cross-culturally? Do you have examples of explaining LVT and governance? I guess the examples would be new. Have you done anything that worked with people that English was their second language? If that.
That's a good question. Your Honor?
Oh, that's for me? No, I mean, I've really relied on the council to explain things to the constituents. And then just, I mean, have I, you mean had it translated into other languages or something, or tried to give them examples? I've actually shared articles. There was an article on Pakistan, I think it was, and other areas that I thought would be of interest to them. But to be honest with you, I don't think they even looked at it because the residents that I do communicate with, really in a borough like ours, what they want you to do is we elected you to take care of us. We don't care what you do as long as you take care of us. If you raised our taxes, you're not taking care of us. If you lowered them, you are taking care of us.
Argue with that.
And I think what, and of course have services, which we've done. We've improved services
Yeah.
incredibly, even with cutting taxes, improved services a lot. That I've communicated with them. Whether they recognize it or not, or appreciate it, that I can't say. I mean, I have been elected. This is my third term. And I was 6 years on council. But the people who I thought could understand it, I've tried to share it with, but to be honest with you, when you start talking about even something as simple with a native English speaker about assessments and taxes and so on, they don't, their eyes glaze over and they're not really interested in hearing what you have to talk about. They just want to know where their taxes going up or down. That's
a
it.
universal language.
Yeah, they're not
Everybody
interested in
is
how it's
technical.
doing it, whether it's fair, whether it's,
Yeah. Somebody asked about population. I looked it up. It's in 2018, it was 1,157. So it's a small population.
yeah, that was, I'm sure, undercounted in back then.
Okay, we
I'd
got
say now it's closer to 2,000.
Jim
It's very
Frederick.
densely populated.
You said it's close to 2,000 now.
That's what if I would say would be accurate, because the single family homes, for the most part, are not broken up into 2 and 3 units,
Okay.
with families living in each. So it's pretty densely populated. That was another big issue that I tried to address. I got council to, back when I had a progressive council to work with, to adopt a rebate, homeowners rebate program to try and encourage home ownership rather than buying properties for rental. But I think, unfortunately, with a lot of the population, a lot of the population are now people who rent. So they don't have much of an interest in taxes. They don't pay the taxes themselves.
Mhm.
So the owners of the properties who may or may not live here have that interest. So it's a completely different ballgame.
Okay.
I don't think that answered your question, but that's sort of the situation that I'm in.
Mhm.
Getting people to buy it, and it may well change. I mean, for all I know, with the CHOP development moving in, maybe they add on something to the CHOP development, Children's Hospital, on that site, like some kind of research center to it, and then you get people with some money, with some salaries, who decide to move to Melbourne, and it could change. I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns.
Daniel Morin wants to know the tax rate at Melbourne. He tried to find it on the internet, and so did I. I found something that said like 24 mils, but it didn't say land or building. So I'm guessing that's the land rate.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. We published the land rate, and also the which is what we tax on, and also what's it called, Josh? The
Improvement.
the combined. Anyway, that sounds about right. And the reason you won't see it is because all municipalities in Delaware County, with the exception of us, have their taxes done by the county. And when we adopted land value tax, the county said, "Oh, we can't do that. It's too complicated to use just the land figure rather than the total figure." They just completely threw up their hands and said, we can't accommodate you. So it's easy enough for us to do. I mean, it's just a matter of getting the what we need in real estate revenue from the budget every year, and totaling the taxable land values, extracting the data from the county. We have to fight them every year for it, incredibly, even though legally we shouldn't be required to have to do that. We still have to fight them to do it.
By Commonwealth law,
Well,
mandated.
well,
Shut up.
this is, you know,
It's difficult for a small municipality because the legal costs are the same for them to sue as it is for the city of Philadelphia to sue. I mean,
well, what I did for the recent values after the reassessment was when I went to DCED and wrote a letter to them, the very next day I received the values. After I had done the filed the right to know request and so on, mysteriously they turned up the next day. So maybe that was the pressure that needed to be applied. I don't know. I've made it clear to the all Democrat council now that, you know, I thought things were going to be different when they were in control, but I haven't seen any change.
and I take it you're in contact with the other municipalities that have underassessed commercial properties?
I've tried to, in particular, the fifth largest municipality in Pennsylvania, Upper Darby, which is our neighbor, which adjoins us besides Philadelphia, should be very, very interested in it. And they basically, even though I helped many of them get elected, they basically closed the door on me. And I mean, I've talked land value tax. The mayor of Upper Darby used to be our borough manager. So she knows all about it. Why they're sitting on it and not doing anything, God only knows. All I can say is that all the political shenanigans and money that's involved behind this, the people that it'll affect, they wield a lot of political influence. And personally, I've got nothing to lose. I don't make a lot of money I don't make any money out of being an elected official here in Melbourne. I think a lot of them actually do have things to lose. So they probably don't want to make any noise, or they want to, you know, ride along and not rock the boat. Unfortunately, I thought things were going to be different with the new political party, but it doesn't appear to be that way.
So Mary Rose Kazarowski says if zoning prevents you from using your land the way you want, you may attempt it through a zoning variance or rezoning. How does municipal LVT address that in Millbourne? So my understanding is that the old Sears site, that Millbourne would accept just about any, you know, kind of use that they might want to do. That there's no.
We completely rezoned that as a planned commercial district.
Okay.
For TOD, and we spent years doing it. Of what were going to be the acceptable uses. Unfortunately, when the owner of the property and the local politicians here who backed this development from Children's Hospital stepped in, they sold this new council on it. And incredibly, the new council's understanding was, if we let them do this, if we let them come in here and build this, none of our residents are going to have to pay taxes ever again. That's the kind of council that I'm dealing with. That's the kind of, so they were completely sold on it. They put people on the zoning hearing board who gave them every variance and special exception that they requested, and they continue to bend over backwards and give them whatever they want. I think they're starting to wake up to the fact that they're not going to realize anything out of this property, that basically they got raped. And they're going to see that eventually. And that's going to be a tough lesson for them to learn. Right now, they're trying to, there's another property in the borough that has a small Bangladeshi grocery store, and it's being taken over by, it's owned by a large Ashkenazi holding thing, and it's being taken over by a health care facility, and they want to know if they can zone it so that they can't force this small grocery out of there. Well, they're finding that things aren't as simple as they have no concept of zoning. They don't know they should not be elected, basically. That's the situation we're in. And unfortunately, I'm finding that even with the fifth largest municipality adjoining us, Upper Darby, many of them probably should not be elected either, because they never even looked at the reassessment data.
Well,
And I mean, I hate to say this, but it just blows my mind that something like this that you can have elected officials that neglect to do their jobs. I mean, I'm just a small borough with, I mean, it's not my job certainly to be doing it as mayor. But
you're like Dennis Hopper in Apocalypse Now. I'm just a small man. It came to mind.
I'm starting to rant now, so thanks, Josh.
Yeah. Alana Hartsock has that you could publish what Children's Hospital should pay as payment in lieu of taxes. That's assuming they get an exemption. It sounds like you're saying you don't expect them to get an exemption.
I'm not expecting them to get an exemption, and we have not been successful with payment in lieu of taxes with our temple. And there's sort of a storefront church that took over another area. And it's basically, I mean, my understanding is you can't force them to honor anything like that.
True.
Why not decrease the millage rate to compensate for the reassessment? Pittsburgh should have done that and did not, so lost their LVT. Well, that's wrong about Pittsburgh. And because no matter how you adjusted the millage rate, it didn't work for the homeowners. And here the homeowners got an increased assessment, but the commercial properties got a decreased assessment. So the millage, if you decrease the millage rate, you lose revenue. From Jonah Dubin, do you think there are ways to ensure that the LVT is maintained going forward? Oh, we had that in Q&A already. Ed Dodson says, Tom, I'm glad I was able to play a small part in helping bring you to look at LVT and turn around your community. The real president goes to a VP at Fannie Mae who came to see that LVT was an important means of increasing the supply of affordable housing. So Alana wants to know, does Millbourne have a GIS or Juneau land value map that you can access? And she go ahead.
It's on the county website, or somewhere. Actually, the county website was hacked last week, so a lot of their links don't work now, particularly the links that have the values of properties. Somehow mysteriously seems to be offline, but
yeah, maybe CSC volunteers hereby to put Millbourne up on its website.
Yeah.
But yes, there is this.
And Alana seconds the idea of getting a home rule charter for Millbourne. Marty suggests to you, Joss, that CSE could offer seminars in advance of elections to continue this legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in Allentown, we had a big education campaign before the vote on LVT, and it worked.
When Ackenbaum has a good website from Realtor.com that has lots of lots of comparable sales and stuff. And that's it for chat. Let me see if there's something new. And
I could mention one thing here. In Pennsylvania, they have what they call intermediate units. In a county, they're groups of school districts. So you may have 20 school districts in Delaware County, and the intermediate unit is the go-to if you are. And I hope at some point, you know, they do pass legislation that will allow Upper Darby School District, to which we pay taxes, to adopt a land value tax system. But that would be the people that you'd want to go to. And I think, Josh, did you happen to see the video from the IU that was to do with the
I watched the whole thing.
Yeah, and actually, you know, those people who spoke were really those are the kind of people who you need to that need to hear about land value tax.
Yeah, I mean, this is money to teach their children well.
And, getting an audience in front of the people like that in the school districts at an IU level like that, I think would be. I mean, I think it'd be a huge hit. I mean, the big concern is always, for most of them, at least in our area, is how are we not going to raise school taxes? Everyone feels they're underfunded and paying too much already.
Right.
And we are.
well, we have one last question from Win Ackenbon. Wanted to know, can you appeal the deadline on assessment appeals because the data was not made available in time? That was my thought too, that if at that time, but it would mean going to the state appeals court.
Here's the, let's see, I can read you the response from our solicitor here.
My guess is he's saying as a practical matter, you can't because it would be too expensive. But as a legal matter, you might be able to.
Here's what he said. Board of Assessment Appeals decision to deny our non-pro-trunk appeal, which means they didn't buy the argument that they should consider our appeals, even though they were filed past this September 21 deadline, and we didn't have the data. Borough has two options regarding the appeals. File the appeals with the Court of Common Pleas on each of the properties disputing the non-pro-trunk decision, which of course costs more legal fees. Right now we're at about $7,000 in for just the one property. Our chance of success at the Court of Common Pleas is 50%. I could see a judge agreeing that the county's failure to respond to our right to no request in account timely manner should extend the filing deadline. I could also see the judge reaching the opposite decision. And then if we lose that, we could wait until next summer to file a timely repeal. And of course, you know, that's so much of it is dependent on politics, to be perfectly honest with you. Who are the judges and who are the, I had an interesting thing happen when I started to make a fuss about the recent reassessment numbers and the underassessment of all these large, wealthy commercial properties that very wealthy people were obviously benefiting obscenely from. I received an email from someone who I didn't recognize the name, and he basically said, "You're on the right track, Tom, and you need to follow through on that. And I have some information for you. I used to be on the Board of Assessment Appeals until the new administration took over, and I have some stuff I want to share with you." So I looked them up, and I never got in touch with him because I found it was a very politically connected person, very politically connected person, and I wasn't sure what this where this was going. Well, that was only about a month ago, and he's dead now. He died just last week.
Coincidence?
Well, I hate to say anything, but I wondered, was this, did they do a Luca Brasi on him or something? But it turns out he died of COVID. But what his secrets were that he was going to share with me, I will never know, I guess. But it was interesting. I kind of regret that. I was very tentative about approaching him because I didn't know where it was going. But
Eddie Moran sleeps with the Hoagies.
yeah, I can tell you one thing: the politics behind it, and there's money, big money behind it, and where there's big money, there's politics behind it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't care less about the politics or whose feathers I ruffle, because I got nothing to lose. Which is, I think, why they don't like me.
I think you're right.
Okay, I think we're about wrapped up. Sue, do you have the list of people Robert Schalkenbach Foundation is a big sponsor.
Right, hold on, in the chat, and I have it, here you go. We'd like to thank the Foundation for Economic Justice, Earth Sharing Associates, the Robert Schalkenbach Foundation, and where'd I go? Oh, as I left it here. Hold on, yes, here we are. Public Revenue Education Council, Common Ground USA, and what did I miss somebody?
Earth Sharing Associates.
Yes. We
Henry
have
George Institute.
and we have several large individual donors.
Yeah, Polly
Um,
Cleveland,
above
Sue
the-
Hansel, Gib Halverson, Mark Sullivan, and Osamu Uhara.
Yeah, we'd like to thank them, and it's
And
been a good.
that's-
It's a long. This has been a long session, but a very good session. So
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think that Tom is passionately committed to his community. I think sometimes whether he likes it or not. And and I think that we got a good perspective that's not, what does Dan call it? A hallelujah Georgist perspective.
Jehovah Georges.
Yeah.
yes.
And I think it's useful for us to know that we're actually helping make a difference for some people that don't have any say in their destiny. And that's a big deal, I think. So thank you, CGO.
Thank you, Josh. I mean, this has been very interesting, and I'm with Marty about stuff. I will say the state of Indiana does do reassessments of its counties on a yearly basis.
Yes.
A little bit behind because I know they think I have a fireplace and I don't. But anyway, we were told just keep asking us and we'll eventually get it done. But yeah, very interesting philosophy. Let's try to get something more. We thank you for bringing us Tom. Tom, thank you very much for being part of us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Mayor Kramer to you.
Yes. Okay.